Hey guys, recently I've been having a lot of fun playing Vanguard, and last week me and my group actually managed to clear the maximum level, which is Elite 10, and we did so with a time of 3 minutes and 7 seconds, which is currently rank 1 on my server, and we actually did it with charms of rank between 16 and 17, so we haven't hit the maximum rank charm yet, which is rank 20, and you can see for the charm that I'm using, it's actually just a rank 16. I was using this one here, which is the Aegis Shield charm, which I think is pretty good, and I'll explain why. I expect that over the next 2 weeks or so, as we get our charm to rank 20, we're actually going to be able to lower this time by another 20 to 30 seconds or so I'll probably be uploading another run then. What I'll do now is I'm going to let the run play while going over my top 5 tips, which will hopefully help you guys easily clear Elite 10, because in my opinion this mode isn't just for whales, and with a lower resonance group that's well optimized, I believe that not only can you clear Elite 10, but you'll also be able to get a pretty good time doing so. Just a quick disclaimer before I start, so running Elite levels doesn't actually give you any extra rewards compared to just running level 4, so then the question becomes, why are you actually running Elite runs? And the answer to that is pretty simple. For me, it's just a fun challenge, and there is a bit of competition on my server, so I do like to see if we can beat the fastest times on our server. So if you don't find pushing for Elite levels fun, then I wouldn't worry too much about it, because you're not going to be missing out on any rewards. Just stick to doing level 4 and you're going to have the same rewards as everyone else. So with that said, let's press on with the video. So for my first tip for Elite 10, I'm going to start off with a pretty controversial one, and that is that healing is bad. So what do you mean by that? Are you crazy? Well, basically, what I mean by that is the healing charms. So for the healing charms, I did say before that they were S tier, but when I made my tier list, that was for Season 1, and the gameplay has changed quite a bit since then, and now if you want to push for Elite 10 and go for a faster time, I wouldn't really recommend going for healing charms. They can still be good in some situations, but if you purely want to go for the best times, then you should really avoid them. So then the question is, where does your healing come from? There's no way you can clear Elite 10 without getting some healing, so the answer to that is simply that we're using 6 pieces of Vithus, which a lot of people have recommended, and it's just really good compared to healing charms, and I would recommend at least 3 players in the party, or even all 4 players in the party, to have 6 pieces of Vithus. So just for people who aren't familiar with the 6-piece Vithus bonus, well, it reads that each time you use a skill to buff yourself or a party member, you create an area for 12 seconds that grants 12% life drain to everyone in the area, and it cannot occur more often than once every 40 seconds. So life drain effects do actually get reduced in Gauntlet, but even if this 12% gets reduced to 1%, which I don't think it is, but it probably does get reduced by quite a large margin, it's still worth using, because generally as you rank up your charms, you're going to be dealing huge numbers and huge amounts of damage, so even a 1% life drain is just going to basically regenerate all your life in pretty much 1 second, as long as you're hitting an enemy. So this is why it's just so much more powerful compared to the healing charms. The other thing I would say is that you should try to stagger your Vithus. So for example, if you have 3 players running Vithus in your party, player 1 should actually press a buff as soon as the game loads, and then player 2 should actually press it as soon as the run starts, and player 3 can actually hold off and press it 5 to 10 seconds into the run. Since the effect has a 12 seconds uptime and it occurs once every 40 seconds, that means the downtime is 28 seconds. So if you have all players in the party using it and staggering the effect, you're pretty much going to have 100% uptime of this heal, and you're pretty much almost going to be invincible. At this point, I'm sure a few of you are going to say, well, don't you lose too much damage going for 6-piece Vithus? Well, we have to consider, what do we lose for actually using the 6-piece Vithus, and in most cases, a lot of builds are actually running 4 pieces of Vithus already, and they usually go for something like 4-piece Banquet or 4-piece Gloom, 4-piece Grace. And aside from Grace, the Banquet and the Gloom both give crit chance, so in this case crit chance isn't actually that useful, and that's because of some of the other charms, like for example the Valor's Call, which gives you a huge amount of crit chance, like 62% crit chance. I just found that the damage that you gain from those charms more than makes up for the slight loss in damage that you're gonna lose from going for 6-piece Vithus. So that's the first tip that I want to give. Moving on to the second tip now, it's really important that you guys focus on your charm composition and also the charm rank, obviously. So in my opinion, this is more important than resonance, and for me the most optimal composition for this would be Blight Orb, which is going to give you 100% extra damage, and then Valor's Call, which is going to give you a huge amount of crit chance, and then for the third charm I would go for Aegis, which is going to give you the shield, and I'll explain how you can actually get damage from this, and it also gives you the shield as well, which is really cool. And then for the last charm, it's kind of an optional slot. You could probably go for Broadside, which is the other Might charm, or you could actually go for a second Aegis or a second Blight Orb charm. So as far as our composition goes in this run, we had 2 Aegis, one Blight Orb, and unfortunately we didn't have the Valor's Call. The wizard we had in our party had a Martyr Charm, and the reason he was using that is because it was a rank 18, which was actually the highest in our party. Otherwise, I really wouldn't recommend you guys to pick that one up, especially on wizard. It doesn't really help the party out a lot, and I don't think he was pressing the charm skill at all during this run, because otherwise he would probably insta-die. I want to talk a bit more about Aegis, which is the shield charm. So in my opinion, this charm is now an S tier charm. The old rating I had in my tier list is an A tier, but in my opinion, this charm is just really crazy in the current system, and it essentially overheals you. So if the Vithus heals you up all the way to full, you're going to have kind of extra healing because of this shield. The other thing is that you can actually squeeze damage out of this charm, which is really good, by using the new legendary skill that we got, which is the shock barrier. And the shock barrier reads that gaining an absorb shield causes you to unleash bursts of energy, dealing damage to all nearby party members equal to 40% of the absorb shield value, up to a maximum of 40% of your base damage. Cannot occur more often than once every 10 seconds. So I would really recommend that if you have one player using Aegis in your party, that everyone in the party uses this legendary skill. The last thing that I want to mention about charms, which is also kind of important, is a lot of the time pressing it as soon as it's off cooldown is probably the right choice. But for example, if you have two of the same charm in your party, like two Blight Orbs or two of the Valor's Call, you kind of do want to stagger the skill effects then, because in a lot of cases these charm effects don't stack together. Moving on to the third tip now, I have to say that monster grouping is the key to success. So on your way to the boss, you're going to get stopped at these walls when you're pushing the car, and you have to face off the guards, and a lot of time they're going to be spread out in every corner, and you just have to have a player, at least one player in your party, who can group up these guards so that you can all hit them together and you can move forward as fast as possible. Some good examples of these skills would be the Barb Chain Sphere with the Shackled Fate chest, or in our case we were using a wizard with Arcane Wind with this Thistle Bloom main hand, which works really well. Another example could be the Crusader Vanilla Drawn Quarter Horse, which can chain up the mobs. I haven't really tested that myself, but I could see it working really well here. I know that a lot of people don't actually use that skill anymore, at least not the variant with the chain. My fourth tip is that group buffs are insanely strong. So there's a few different group buffs that I want to go over because they're not all the same. But if we just take a look at my party composition here, we have two wizards and two tempests. So for one of the wizards, they've just gone full DPS because wizard doesn't have any real good group buffs. And for the second wizard, they've gone for more utility and CC so that they can group the mobs for us. So for this specific run, all of the group buffs were coming either from myself as the tempest or from the other tempest in the party. So I'm going to go over the different types of group buffs now. The first and most important one, in my opinion, is critical hit damage. This is incredibly strong because a lot of the time you have really high crit chance here, and especially if you're running with Valor's Call, you're going to have super high crit chance. So having critical hit damage just boosts your damage by such a huge margin. And some really good sources of critical hit damage, in my opinion, is the Tempest chest with Cascade. That essence is extremely strong here. It gives you 50% critical hit damage. Another one would be the Necro Shoulders. I think that one also does give you critical hit damage. I can't remember the essence name. I'm not too sure if there's any other ones. Do let me know in the comments what other essence you do like for critical hit damage. The second most important group buff is the buffs to primary attacks. So for example, the Storm Fury for the Tempest or the Crusader, which gives you the Fire Banner. Those are incredibly strong and I would definitely prioritize those. The last type of group buff is the Armor Shatter or Armor Break, which is also decently strong. Unfortunately, these don't stack, so I would recommend one player to focus on having a really high armor break effects that has 100% uptime, and for all other players in the party not to focus on this because they just don't stack and it isn't going to help you. So notable examples of this is the Vortex armor break for Tempest. It works pretty well. Another one which is also really strong, I think it's like 35% armor break, is the Cleave armor break shoulders on Barb. The most crucial thing to note for all of these buffs is that it's actually worth going for some of these buffs over having higher solo DPS. Because this is a group-oriented mode, you kind of want to prioritize the group DPS rather than your own solo DPS. So even if you've tested a setup that does a lot more damage on the dummy just as a solo player, it might not actually be the best setup going into the Vanguard. My fifth and final tip is related to Paragon trees and familiars. So for Paragon trees, they're extremely important. I would really recommend you guys to either go for Slinger if you have a really high charm rank like 17 or 18 plus, and this will allow you to have the maximum amount of damage. So this is what the setup for Slinger looks like, and this is what I think most of my party members opted to use. In my case, I actually opted to go for the Survivor tree because my charm was still pretty low rank and I wasn't confident with my tankiness, so I went for something like this here. So this setup gives you healing from this node, it gives you gives you block chance here, and it also gives you cheat death and also damage reduction, which is also really good. So for the legendary skill, I've already mentioned this. It's the shock barrier that I like to go for because we have 2 people in a party that we're using Aegis. If you don't have someone in your party using Aegis, then I would actually recommend you to go for the Benefactor just to get the extra shields. This one actually works really well. So speaking of cheat deaths, you can also go for another cheat death here from the familiar, which gives you the cheat death from the savior. If you are comfortable with your survivability and you have a really nice legendary pet with the lingering ruins effect, then you could always go for that if you'd like. That's about everything that I wanted to share for this video, guys. I hope that this video has been useful, and I want to wish you good luck for your elite runs. I'm kind of curious what the fastest times for Vanguard in your server are, so as always, feel free to leave a comment below and let me know. For now, I'm going to be signing off. I want to thank you all so much for watching, and I hope you all have a great new year. Peace.